Imagine losing a child. Now, imagine finding out decades later that in your darkest moment of grief, the government secretly stole a piece of them, a piece of their body, without ever asking. This isn't some horror movie plot, it actually happened. Welcome to Veiled Histories, where we uncover the stories that were never meant to be told.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like something straight out of a wild conspiracy theory, right? But it's not. It is all right there in declassified documents. At the absolute height of the Cold War, a secret network was set up. It reached into hospitals and morgues all across the globe, all for one really grim purpose.
And here's where it gets so much more disturbing. The main targets, they were babies, infants and young children. Some were stillborn, others just a few years old. Parts of their bodies were harvested, given a catalog number, and then shipped off to labs for testing.
So the question is just why? I mean, what on earth could possibly justify a secret, global body-snatching operation that specifically targets kids? Well, the answer, it's found in a brand new kind of fear, an invisible terror that was gripping the entire planet. Okay, so to really get why this happened, we've got to rewind the clock. We're going back to the dawn of the atomic age, a time when humanity created a power that, frankly, we had no idea how to handle.
So picture the 1950s. The Cold War is in full swing, and nuclear terror is just ramping up. The bombs are getting bigger, way, way bigger. Every time they test one, like the Monster Castle Bravo test, they were just pumping the sky full of this invisible, deadly dust. And that dust, it didn't just disappear. It circled the entire planet and then rained back down on everyone. And when the crew of the Lucky Dragon, a Japanese fishing boat, got exposed to it, suddenly this invisible threat was terrifyingly real.
You know, it's serious when the Atomic Energy Commission itself basically says, yep, the whole world is in danger now. People started to realize this wasn't just about surviving the initial blast anymore. No, this threat was in the air, in the rain. It was literally everywhere.
Okay, so the scientist had a boogeyman, and its name was strontium-90. Now here's the nasty trick it plays. Our bodies think it's calcium. So you can see the chain reaction, right? It falls from the sky, lands on the grass, cows eat the grass, it gets concentrated in their milk, and then we drink the milk. Our kids drink the milk. And this radioactive stuff goes straight to where calcium is supposed to go, our bones and teeth. So this was the terrifying question keeping scientists and government officials up at night. They knew this poison was in the food chain. They knew we were all consuming it. But the big, scary unknown was how much of it was actually sticking around inside our bodies. Finding that out wasn't just some science project. It became a top priority for national security.
And the solution they came up with, well, it had a sickeningly cheerful name for something so dark. They called it Project Sunshine.
And just so you know, I'm not making this up, here it is. This is the actual cover of the declassified report, Project Sunshine. It was real, it was official, and the plan inside was absolutely chilling.
Okay, let's just try to understand their logic. From a purely scientific, totally detached point of view, it kind of makes a horrible sort of sense. You want to know how much radioactive junk is in people? You got to test their bones. But which bones? Well, if you want the absolute best, most recent data, you go to the bones that are growing the fastest. And whose bones are those? Babies and young children. Their skeletons were like a perfect, living record of all the recent radioactive fallout.
So the scientific goal was clear. But how they decided to get those bones, that's where the story takes a very sharp turn into some really dark territory. You know, uncovering these kinds of uncomfortable histories is exactly what we do here. If you think that's important, do us a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to Veiled Histories. That way you won't miss what we dig up next.
All right, let's get into the part of the story they never, ever wanted anyone to know, the how. How do they actually get all those samples? What you're looking at is a page taken right from that secret report. And it's not some vague proposal. These are straight-up instructions. And the language? It's so cold, so bureaucratic. It reads like they're ordering office supplies, not talking about harvesting human remains. And here it is, right there in black and white. Collect rib bone samples from autopsies by age groups. And look at the very first group they list, 0 to 10 years old. It's so methodical, so precise, and it completely turns these children into nothing more than data points.
So, what was the game plan? It was basically a 4-step operation. Step 1, build a worldwide network of, well, let's call them agents, people with access to bodies. Step 2, pay off doctors, morgue workers, anyone who could get them what they needed. Step 3,
Collect the samples, tissue, bones, you name it. And the final step, the one that made the whole thing work, step 4. Never, ever tell the families. No consent, no questions asked, just silence.
The number they landed on, well, estimates suggest they took samples from at least 1,500 people. And yes, most of them were children. Just let that sink in. Every single one of those numbers represents a family that was deceived during the absolute worst moment of their entire lives.
Of course, a secret this big, this dark, it wasn't going to stay buried forever. And when it finally came out, decades later, it forced us all to ask some really tough questions about science, about fear, and about the abuse of power.
Can you believe it? For 40 years, 4 decades, the families had absolutely no idea. The whole ugly project was just hidden away in classified files. It wasn't until the 1990s, when documents were finally declassified, that the story broke. And as you can imagine, people were absolutely horrified.
When you put the then versus the now side by side, it's night and day. Back in the 50s, fear was king. The government saw human bodies as just a resource, a way to get data. And they decided that the greater good was more important than any one person's rights. Fast forward to today, the absolute bedrock of all medical research is what we call informed consent. The idea of taking anything without the family's full knowledge and permission, it's not just wrong, it's unthinkable. The individual's dignity comes first.
Look, the crazy thing is, Project Sunshine probably wasn't run by evil people twirling their mustaches. It was run by scientists, by government officials who were genuinely scared to death of nuclear annihilation. And that's maybe the most chilling lesson of all, how easily fear can make good people do monstrous things. When you're terrified enough, you can justify almost anything.
And that leaves us with a question that's just as important today as it was back then. When the people in charge tell us that drastic measures are needed for the greater good, for our own safety, who's watching them? Who makes sure that our fear doesn't become the justification for losing our own humanity?